You wake up before the sun. No alarm, no phone, just the cold air on your skin and the sound of someone already moving near the fire. For most of human history, this was simply Tuesday. Not a reenactment, not a survival show, just life, repeated for roughly 300,000 years by people whose bodies were almost identical to yours. So what did a real day actually look like? Not the cartoon version, the version backed by bones, tools, and decades of fieldwork. Let's start with the biggest myth. You probably picture a prehistoric human hunting constantly, starving often, dying young and exhausted. The evidence tells a stranger story. In 1963, anthropologist Richard Lee spent months living with the Juhuansi San people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last hunter-gatherer groups still living a broadly traditional lifestyle at the time. He tracked exactly how they spent their hours. His findings shocked the field. Adults worked, on average, around 15 hours a week to meet their basic food needs. 15 hours, not 50, not 70. The rest of the time was spent resting, socializing, making tools, telling stories, and sleeping. Lee's study became one of the most cited pieces of evidence for what researchers now call the original affluent society, a phrase coined by anthropologist Marshall Solins to describe a life that wasn't poor, just differently rich. Anthropologist James Sussman, who spent years studying the Juhuansi decades after Lee, confirmed a similar pattern. Food was often abundant enough that people had time left over, time for leisure, time for boredom even. So why does the popular image of prehistoric life look like constant desperation? Partly because the hardest chapters of human history got remembered the loudest. Ice ages, famines, predator attacks. Those moments were real, but they weren't every day. They were the exception that got carved into memory, not the rule that filled the calendar. Let's reconstruct an actual day. You wake with the light because there's no reason not to. Your body clock runs on sunrise and sunset, cortisol rising with the sky. You eat something left from the night before, maybe dried meat, maybe a handful of foraged nuts. Then the group splits. Some people go out to gather. In most hunter-gatherer societies studied by anthropologists, gathering plants, tubers, nuts, and fruit provided more consistent calories than hunting did. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner, known for her research on the Juhuansi and their social systems, documented how gathering wasn't just women's work in a rigid sense, but a flexible, skill-based activity that shifted with the season and the terrain. Hunting, when it happened, was a slower, more patient act than movies suggest. Trackers could follow a set of hoofprints for hours, reading depth, spacing, and freshness like a language. A successful hunt might feed the group for days. An unsuccessful one wasn't a crisis. It was just tomorrow's problem, because food was shared. And sharing wasn't optional generosity. It was survival infrastructure. If you killed an animal today, someone else would share with you tomorrow. Anthropologists studying foraging societies have repeatedly found this reciprocity is one of the oldest human systems on record. Older than agriculture, older than writing, arguably older than language itself in its simplest forms. By midday, the heat pushes everyone into shade. This is where a strange truth about prehistoric life shows up. Boredom. With food secured in a matter of hours, there was time left to fill. People made tools they didn't strictly need yet. They told stories that had nothing to do with survival. Around Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found engraved ochre dating back roughly 75,000 years. Deliberate patterns etched into stone with no practical function. Not a tool, not a weapon. Just a mark made because a mind wanted to make it. That single detail matters more than it seems. It means prehistoric humans weren't just surviving machines. They were bored enough, safe enough, and curious enough to create art. Evenings brought the fire back into focus. This is where the real social architecture of prehistoric life lived. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner's research specifically looked at nighttime conversation among the Juhuansi and found something striking. Daytime talk was mostly practical, complaints, coordination, gossip about resources. Nighttime talk, around the fire, shifted dramatically toward storytelling, myths, and shared history. Fire didn't just cook food. It created the world's first classroom, the first theater, the first therapy session. Sleep itself looked different too. There's a persistent modern anxiety about waking in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, assuming something is broken. Sleep researcher Roger E. Kirch's historical work suggests humans once slept in two segments, a first sleep and a second sleep, with a quiet waking period in between, used for reflection, quiet talk, or intimacy. Some anthropological observations of hunter-gatherer groups show flexible, broken sleep patterns tied to firelight and group safety, not the rigid 8-hour block modern life demands. So the version of prehistoric life backed by evidence isn't grim struggle from dawn to dusk. It's closer to this: a short workday, shared food, deep rest, real boredom, and nightly ritual. Here's the counterintuitive twist. The thing that actually made life harder for humans wasn't living as a hunter-gatherer, it was leaving it. When agriculture spread, starting roughly 12,000 years ago, skeletal evidence from early farming communities shows something unexpected. Bones from early farmers frequently show more signs of malnutrition, more dental disease, and shorter average stature compared to hunter-gatherer populations before them. Farming produced more total food, but it also meant working longer hours, eating a narrower range of crops, and living in denser settlements where disease spread faster. The trade wasn't obviously an upgrade. It just became permanent, because once populations grew to depend on farmed calories, there was no going back. So the leisurely, wandering hunter-gatherer didn't evolve into the exhausted farmer because farming was better for the individual body. It happened because farming could feed more people per acre, and once that door opened, it never closed again. Which brings us to now. You, reading this, likely work far more than 15 hours a week. Your sleep is compressed into one unbroken block, disrupted by a screen an arm's length from your face. Your evenings are often spent alone with a device instead of a fire and a group of familiar voices. Your body still expects sunrise-timed cortisol, shared food, unstructured rest, and nightly storytelling. It got a fluorescent office, a refrigerator, and a notifications tab instead. None of this means modern life is worse across the board. Medicine, safety, and choice are real gains prehistoric humans didn't have. But the exhaustion so many people quietly carry isn't a personal failure. It's a mismatch, a nervous system built for 15 hours and firelight, running on 40+ hours in blue light. You wake up before the sun again tomorrow, this time to an alarm instead of instinct. The body underneath the noise is the same one that once had time left over. It just hasn't gotten the memo.